Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau blasted Russian President Vladimir Putin on Russia doubling down on its war in Ukraine. UCP leadership hopeful Brian Jean shares his vision for Alberta and explains why Conservative members should vote for him on October the 6th. And a Lethbridge police officer received a Special Medal of Bravery from Canada's Governor General. We will explain why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. During Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's recent trip to the UN in New York, he condemned Russian President Vladimir Putin's apparent effort to double down on his war in Ukraine. Trudeau said Putin's ill-advised invasion is failing and flailing. Trudeau also said Putin's nuclear saber-rattling is dangerous and deserving of the world's deep concern.
Putin has fundamentally miscalculated in a whole bunch of different ways. He massively underestimated, first and foremost, the strength, the resilience, the courage of Ukrainians when it comes to defending their homeland, defending their rights to choose their own future. We need to continue to demonstrate the strength and solidarity, not just of countries around the world, but of people around the world.
Meanwhile, large numbers of Russians rushed to book one-way tickets out of the country late Wednesday. This followed the announcement by Russian President Vladimir Putin that his country will be mobilizing around 300,000 army reservists for a special military operation in Ukraine. According to the United Nations, so far more than 14,000 lives have been lost since the war began on February the 24th. Ukraine announced a high-profile prisoner swap on Thursday, and what was the culmination of months of efforts to free many Ukrainian fighters who defended a steel plant in Mariupol during a long Russian siege. Officials say there were almost 300 people exchanged, including 10 foreigners and various commanders. The foreigners released included 2 Britons and a Moroccan who was sentenced to death in June after being captured while fighting for Ukraine. During question period on Thursday, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the Trudeau Liberals must begin slashing and not raising taxes to help make life more affordable for Canadians. The Prime Minister says his government is there for Canadians.
They plan to raise taxes on paychecks. Now, yesterday, the finance minister claimed that all the EI tax hikes that they would collect would go to EI benefits. In fact, I looked it up over the next 3 years. They're going to collect $10 billion more in EI taxes than they pay out in EI benefits, allowing the Prime Minister to grab up the difference and use it to feed his insatiable spending appetites. Canadians can't afford a bigger bite off their paychecks. Will the Prime Minister cancel his tax hikes on Canadian paychecks?
Facts are that when the Leader of the Opposition was the Minister responsible for employment insurance, premiums were 20% higher for workers than they are now. That's right, workers paid 20% more. That's why we're continuing to move forward to support workers. On the issue of the CPP, we promise to be there for workers as they become seniors to help them with their retirements, and that's exactly what we did. And in regards to pricing pollution, we promised it would no longer be free to pollute anywhere in this country, and it no longer is.
The Alberta government announced that its fuel tax relief program will continue for the next 3 months. Finance Minister Jason Nixon says as long as West Texas Intermediate oil remains above $79.99 US per barrel, the 8.5 cents per litre of savings will continue. In a release, Nixon says so far Albertans have saved $630 million in fuel tax relief. He says Albertans will continue to have the lowest provincial tax in the country at just 4.5 cents per litre. The province also announced today that it will invest $8 million over the next couple of years to fund new micro-credential programs. Officials say they will create new opportunities for unemployed and underemployed Albertans. The programs will help Albertans to improve their skill sets to re-enter the workforce.
This new funding will help Albertans develop the job-ready skills that they need to be successful and help them to build new careers. Now, I understand there may be some questions about, well, what exactly is a micro-credential and how will it help improve someone's employability? So let me answer some of those questions for you. In short, a micro-credential is a short-term certificate program that provides specialized skills training. Now, these programs can vary in length from a couple of hours to a few weeks. They can be a component of a degree, a diploma or a certificate program, or they can be a standalone credential.
UCP leadership hopeful Brian Jean was in Lethbridge recently. He visited with a number of patrons at the Lethbridge Senior Centre. Seniors who shared what was on their minds, but their biggest concern most of all was
inflation. They talked about prices going up, whether it's groceries, whether it's appliances, whether it's fixtures. And that's why I proposed a royalty-free gasoline and diesel program. You know what? We own the oil and diesel here in Alberta. Why are we paying royalties on it to our own government so they can go spend it? So I'm proposing that we would do royalty-free oil and gasoline for all of the oil, for all the gasoline and diesel that we consume here in Alberta.
Catch the exclusive interview with UCP leadership candidate Brian Jean and myself coming up after business news. By the way, the party will be choosing its new leader on October the 6th. A number of Canadians are quite concerned with the MAID initiative, or Medical Assistance in Dying. You can include David Gretzky, the Vice President of the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada in that group. Gretzky says one of his biggest concerns is how the federal government is considering changes to MAID next year, which would allow those who suffer from mental illness to be able to apply for medical assistance in dying.
The biggest concern with MAID being opening up to people with just mental illness alone is it's kind of sending a signal that if they have need for treatment, for various types of therapies, this now becomes an out. This becomes a way for them, because we know that mental illness issues take a long time to deal with often, and they're complicated, and they're not simple to work through. And so, unfortunately, I think that what this does is it basically gives permission to mentally ill people to say, well, if there's no solution, there's always MAID.
Make sure you catch the full interview with David Gretzky from EFC and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. Now, speaking of Jeanette, she's in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, we had some light showers today in Lethbridge. How long will those rain clouds be sticking around?
Well, not long at all, Hal. We could see a little bit more shower activity this evening, but then those clouds, they should be clearing away for the morning, bringing us some beautiful sunny days ahead, beginning Friday, which will also bring us a high of 21 degrees, which is higher than the average high for this time of year of 19. I'll definitely take it, but just wait until you see the temperatures that are in store for us over the weekend and into next week. I will have that 7-day forecast coming up for you later on in the show.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Jeanette. A Lethbridge police officer received the Medal of Bravery at a recent ceremony in Ottawa. Constable Marco Pagliarici received the honor from Governor General Mary Simon. Constable Pagliarici is the first Lethbridge police officer to receive the honor in the 120-year history of the LPS. The award was to recognize Pagliarici's heroic efforts when he rescued several residents from a fire in the Bridge Villa Estates trailer park back in 2017. Pagliarici has been a member of the Lethbridge Police Service since 2001. He's also a decorated Canadian Forces veteran of 23 years. Thousands of police officers from across Canada packed a large venue in North Toronto to pay respects to Toronto Police Constable Andrew Hong. The 48-year-old officer was gunned down in what's been described as an ambush attack. His daughter spoke about how much he really meant to her.
That day, we lost a hero. We lost a friend, a brother, a son, a husband, and a father. That day, my dad was taken from me, and he was taken too soon. He still had so much of his life to live, to share with his wife and kids, and so many more days out on that bike. Dad, I am so grateful to have spent my whole life with you. I am so grateful you met Mom, were there to raise me with her, and continue to watch me grow as a person. I am so grateful you were in my life, and I am so sorry you aren't going to be here to watch the rest of it.
Following the first week of back to school, Lethbridge City Transit says they're happy to see transit ridership numbers up. Officials say the amount of riders has increased by more than 50%. Tim Sanderson, the general manager for Lethbridge Transit, says they suspect the high numbers are due to everyone coming back following the COVID-19 pandemic.
This time, especially coming off of COVID, it is even more welcome. Coming off of COVID, coming off of the professor strike, and really just having everybody back at school and seeing this big bump, and just welcoming them back on our vehicles. We're keeping track with the rest of Western Canada as far as our ridership recovery from COVID, which is about 60% where we were previously. The encouraging thing is really the gains that we are making, especially since our service is smaller.
With many people using the transit services, Sanderson says they will be making some no-cost adjustments to help improve their on-time performance. With the high cost of living right now, Alberta food banks are experiencing record-high demand. One food bank in Lethbridge in particular reported a 30% boost in the number of clients so far this year. The Alberta Motor Association has partnered with Food Banks Alberta and select grocery stores across the province to collect non-perishable food for vulnerable children and their families. Christy Lavin with the AMA explains why the organization chose to get involved with fighting food insecurity.
Our corporate responsibility pillars at AMA are threefold. One is child security, another is sustainability and environmental causes, and our third is fighting food insecurity in the province. Food insecurity is at the root cause of a lot of social problems that people face in Alberta, and it's a symptom of other issues. So it's a very direct way that we can help improve the lives of Albertans and make healthier communities throughout the province.
In Lethbridge, all proceeds support the Interfaith Food Bank and Lethbridge Food Bank. Donations can be dropped off between September 16th and the 30th at select grocery stores. And you can visit the AMA website for more information and to find out a drop-off location near you. The University of Lethbridge opened the Egoscany Gathering Centre. Egoscany means low horn. It is named in honor of one of the university's most iconic figures, Dr. Leroy Littlebear. Officials say it's an integral space for Indigenous students and the campus community to come together in ceremony, celebration, and learning.
It's an attestation of all the hard work that all of the Indigenous faculty and staff have put forth towards making this happen. Over the last few generations. I'm speaking about Leroy Littlebear, who this center is named after. There's been many other faculty and staff who have, they're very passionate about what they do, which is creating the best post-secondary experience for Indigenous students on the campus. And not only for Indigenous students, but also about creating relationships with Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, because that's one of the most important aspects of truth and reconciliation.
It's a great day for the whole idea about reconciliation. Even though Egoscany Center might be primarily focused at Indigenous students, but it's also for all students, and it's a center where reconciliation can really be realized.
The Egoscany Gathering Centre is designed as a welcoming home away from home for many here in our Indigenous community. It includes a space for ceremonies and even smudging. The Music Lab, a local nonprofit organization, is promoting some new music through a concert that will be taking place this weekend. This event will be the first of its kind for our city, as it's a chance to hear some music from all around the world. The title of the concert is called Sound of Migration. Arlen Schultz, the head of composition area for the music department at the University of Lethbridge, explains what the theme entails and how it came to be.
It was proposed actually by an ensemble from Mexico, the Onyx Ensemble, who was actually supposed to join us this week. They were the ones who proposed it, and they deal very intimately with issues of human migration, especially being that they're one of the busiest border crossings in the world between Mexico and the United States. And it was something that they felt would be, a really important thing to address from an artistic standpoint, to see how that actually influenced different composers and what their music would be like if they interrogated that concept.
Sound of Migration looks like a wonderful show. By the way, the show will be taking place at the university's recital hall on Saturday evening, beginning at 7:30. More than 17,000 people attended a two-night festival of joy in Mongolia's capital city recently. Officials say of those, more than 2,000 people gave their lives to Christ. Another 18,000 watched the festival online, with powerful gospel messages being delivered by evangelist Franklin Graham.
Tonight you can be forgiven. And tonight you can have a new beginning.
Өнөөдөр таны амьдрал шинэ эхлэл байх болно.
Cleansed from all of your sins.
Таны гим нүглээс уучлагдаж цэвэрлэгдэх шинэ эхлэл.
With that hope of heaven.
Энэ бол Тэнгэрээс өгөгдөж байгаа шинэ найдвар.
But you have to make a choice.
Харин та сонголтыг хийх ёстой.
You have to make a choice.
Та ч гэсэн бас адилхан сонголтыг хийх хэрэгтэй.
And I'm going to ask you to do that right now.
So many people and so wonderful to see. Also wonderful to see more moisture here in our region for the first official day of fall. We've needed the rain, but the rain clouds, however, will be leaving us fairly soon. A full look at the forecast along with how the rest of the week is shaping up is coming up. We had some light showers in many regions of southwestern Alberta today. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a full look at the forecast. Jeanette, it appears as though the much-needed rain we receive will be leaving us soon.
It sure will be, Hal. After this evening, when we'll be seeing a 60% chance of showers, those clouds should clear away, bringing us beautiful, sunny conditions for the next week or so. And also some higher than average temperatures as well. 21 the high on both Friday and Saturday, up to 22 on Sunday. Monday's high 24, and then all the way up to a beautiful 30 degrees on Tuesday and 27 on Wednesday. So it looks like we could get a 30-degree day in there one more time, at least for the fall. Average high for this time of year, 19. Average low, 4 degrees. 31 was our high temperature on this day back in 1994. And in 2000, it was a chilly -5. 7:17, that's when the sun rose this morning, and our sun set this evening at 7:30 p.m., giving us 12 hours and 13 minutes of daylight. Okay, so on the west coast tomorrow, looking at some rainy conditions in both Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow. High of 20 degrees in Victoria, 17 in Vancouver, 17 also the high tomorrow in Edmonton, starting out sunny with increasing clouds. Calgary, high of 20 degrees, mainly sunny skies, but then we're going to see some increasing clouds later on in the day as well. As for Saskatoon, looking at a chance of showers, 20 the high there, 15 degrees the high in Regina, and 13 the high in Winnipeg. Both of those prairie cities also seeing a chance of showers. Winnipeg seeing some windy conditions, up to 30 to 50 km/h wind gusts. As we look to the central part of the country, beautiful sunshine in Toronto expected tomorrow, 16 the high, 13 the high in Ottawa tomorrow. Also in Montreal, looking at a high of 13 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Now, Atlantic Canada is under a hurricane watch. This could be upgraded to a hurricane warning in the next 36 hours, meaning that there could be hurricane-like conditions hitting land by Saturday. Many of these cities seeing heavy rainfall beginning tonight into tomorrow, especially Friday night. So Fredericton's high tomorrow, 11 degrees. Fredericton expecting 20 to 30 millimeters of rain this evening, another 30% chance tomorrow. Halifax looking at a high of 14 tomorrow, could get over 100 millimeters of rain by Friday night. Charlottetown close to 100 millimeters of rain Friday night as well. 14 the high for Friday though. 19 the high in St. John's tomorrow on Friday with a 60% chance of drizzle there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The province announced that de Havilland Canada will be building an airline manufacturing facility east of Calgary. Premier Jason Kenney says the plant will employ around 1,500 workers. Kenney called the initiative a game-changing investment. Kenney says the announcement by de Havilland is a major sign of economic growth, job opportunities, and diversification happening here in Alberta. He says the company plans to build 3 different types of aircraft at the plant. A new player is taken to the skies in Canada's crowded airline field. Canada Jetlines is a new startup based in Mississauga, Ontario. Its inaugural flight went from Pearson International to Calgary's International Airport to kick off a twice-weekly schedule. The new airline bills itself as an all-Canadian, value-focused leisure carrier. While Toronto to Calgary is the only scheduled route for now, company officials say they plan to service the leisure market both domestically and with transborder flights to the Caribbean and the Americas. Now, here's a look at today's markets, where bond yields surged as the rate hikes are sinking U.S. stocks.
The TSX was down 181 points on the day to finish at 19,002. The Dow was down 107 points to 30,076. The S&P 500 was down 31 on the day to 3757, and the Nasdaq was down 153 points to 11,066. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 59 cents to 83.53 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 58 cents to 7.20 US. Gold was down 9 cents to 1671.31 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at 1963 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.43 per bushel, barley's at $8.75, canola's at $17.80, and corn is at $11.88 per bushel. Live cattle were down $1.03 to $144.85. Feeder cattle were down $1.25 to $177.98, and lean hogs were down 30 cents to 94.13. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 74.14 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, a Lethbridge police officer received the Medal of Bravery at a recent ceremony in Ottawa. Constable Marco Pagliarici received the honor by Governor General Mary Simon. Constable Pagliarici is the first Lethbridge police officer to receive the honor in the 120-year history of the LPS. The honor stems from a 2017 incident in which Pagliarici saved a number of people from a fire at the Bridge Villa Estates trailer park here in Lethbridge. A number of Canadians are concerned with MAID, or medical assistance in dying, and some of the new changes to the legislation which may be coming next spring. David Goretzky, Vice President with the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, explains what their concerns are shortly. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. The Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization is looking for volunteers to take part in their Drive Happiness program. This program is to help seniors in our community who are facing extreme loneliness due to lack of accessible transportation. Volunteers drive clients to their medical appointments, pick up groceries, and take them to important life activities. If you're interested in this opportunity and for more information, visit lethseniors.com/volunteer drivers. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a nonprofit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. For more information, call 403-380-6338 or visit their website, lethbridgelegalguidance.ca. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Well, the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada has for many years been at the forefront of tackling issues of faith in our Canadian political and cultural world. The EFC is in the process of making some changes, and we want to discuss some of these as well as some of the current issues that we're facing in Canada. We are joined today by David Goretzky, the Executive Vice President of the EFC, soon to be the future president. Welcome to Bridge City News, David. Great to have you on.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Okay, so for any viewers who may be unfamiliar with the EFC, can you first of all explain what your organization is all about?
Sure, I'd love to do that. We're the National Association of Evangelical Denominations and post-secondary schools, ministry organizations, and hundreds of congregations. And we do various types of things. We have 3 centers that we work out of. We have a center for ministry and ministry partnership and innovation, and we do collaboration. What can we do together that we couldn't do apart? We do public policy work out of our Center for Faith and Public Life, advocacy work and matters of life issues, religious freedom issues. We intervene in court cases. We've been in over 30 Supreme Court cases over the years. And we also have a Center for Research on Church and Faith, where we look at trends in religious attitudes in Canada and various types of issues that are facing the church. So those are our primary. And then we produce resources out of that. We have a couple magazines. Faith Today is our bi-monthly magazine, and we produce other kinds of resources like podcasts and webinars and digital media and so on.
Wow, sounds like you guys are definitely involved in a lot. Now, some viewers may know the name Bruce Clemenger, who has served for many years as the EFC president. So tell us what changes are going to be taking place for both Bruce and yourself. I may have given it away at the beginning of the interview.
For me, of course, as of January 31st, I'll be taking up the challenge of becoming president and CEO of the EFC on January 31st, 2023. And
Congratulations.
so thank you very much. Looking forward to it. I'm sure there's lots of challenges forward as well.
Definitely.
And Bruce has been with the organization for 30 years and 20 years of that as president. And he's going to be moving into a senior role. He's staying on with the EFC, focusing his work really on as a senior ambassador, and he's going to be focusing his work really in his area of expertise, which is like public policy and faith and legal issues and so on. So he'll write and speak and continue to engage on the Hill.
Okay, so maybe let's touch base on some of the current issues that EFC is working on. So the rapid expansion of MAID, of course, medical aid in dying, is raising some concerns. As of March of 2023, people with mental illness alone will be eligible for assisted dying in Canada. So how will this impact people with mental health concerns and those who love them?
Well, I think that the biggest concern with MAID being opening up to people with just mental illness alone is it's kind of sending a signal that if they have need for treatment, for various types of therapies, this now becomes an out. This becomes a way for them, because we know that mental illness issues take a long time to deal with often, and they're complicated, and they're not simple to work through. And so, unfortunately, I think that what this does is it basically gives permission to mentally ill people to say, well, if there's no solution, there's always MAID. Right. And I think that the other issue is, as we know, many people with mental illnesses already face suicidal thoughts and ideations. And so that's the challenge. Like already, if someone has a mental illness where suicide is part of their experience, suicidal thoughts is part of their experience, this is kind of opening a door to kind of give permission to that. And I think what we're doing is we're creating a bit of a paradox here, because on the one side, on mental illness, we're very much concerned about preventing suicide. And so there are lots of people that we work hard to, give treatment and therapy so that they will stay away from suicide. But then on the flip side, we're opening the door to other people who just by virtue of mental illness alone might say, well, I don't want to go through the hard work of trying to solve this issue. Mm-hmm. And so MAID's a good option for me. So it's a bit of a paradox in our society. Suicide prevention on one side, and yet we're opening the door for it to make it a lot easier for others.
Yeah, I was just going to say it is a paradox. It's so ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think the saddest thing is that the experts tell us, the medical experts tell us that, those people, especially with depression, that's a large clinical depression is a large issue amongst people with mental illness, and the experts are saying that like with proper treatment, we can resolve that issue within 6 months to 12 months of medication and therapy. But the way the regime is set up right now, if someone is depressed and suicidal, there's only a 90-day waiting period for them, and that's often not enough time to take care of the problem.
Wow. Okay. So what would you say to those who argue that this expansion is a positive thing? What is it about mental illness on its own that perhaps could end up placing vulnerable people at unnecessary risk of death?
Maybe a lot of people may not realize that about 1 in 5 Canadians will face some kind of mental health challenge in their life. That means like 1 out of 5 people in Canada are facing those kinds of challenges. And I can't imagine that it's a good thing to say, well, we're sorry, we really can't help you. We don't have enough resources to help you. And so we've opened the door here for you just to end your life as a result. We have to do better than that. We have to be able to admit that it's a huge problem, that we're going to have to put resources to it. We're going to have to make sure that we're taking care of people with mental health issues. But by opening this door, I really think that this is actually taking the pressure off of our governments to say, well, this is an easy way for us to deal with mental illness. We don't have to deal with as many people then if they opt for MAID. And I think the other really not positive thing about this is I expect, and we've already seen stories of this, is that this is really a family dividing issue. So you can have someone in a family who's suicidal, mentally depressed perhaps, and who perhaps wants to end their life. And some family members are saying, no, 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 we don't want you to, we want you to stay around. And others are saying, this is just too much of a burden, and it's going to divide families. And we're actually seeing evidence of that already. So we've got to do better. I think the statement we need to be saying to people with mental health issues is, you matter, you matter. And it's hard for me to imagine how medical assistants in dying for mental health issues is saying you matter.
Oh, so true. So David, what kinds of specific supports and treatment options would you like to see put in place instead?
Well, one of the things, even given that the regime is going to likely go forward, it is already legislated to start in March 2023. We're very concerned that there's only a 90-day waiting period. And so that alone is insufficient amount of time for someone to be properly assessed if they've never really been assessed before, to gain options for treatment. And so certainly a much longer waiting time. A call really for greater access for people to mental health resources. There's lots of people who maybe don't have insurance systems that pay for psychologists and counselors and therapists. And so they're left without. And so the people who can maybe afford it or have insurance to cover it, they're maybe covered. But even for those who are covered, there's long, especially after COVID, there's long waiting lists to see specialists, mental health specialists. And so, we're calling for better access, better resourcing. And then, of course, from a Christian perspective, I mean, we as Christians, we have to step up and we have to realize that we have to learn more about mental health issues. We have to learn how to support those who are going through it. And I think churches can have a great role to play in helping out in these situations.
Do you know if once that person gets put on that 90-day waiting period, are they then given access to all kinds of extra supports and therapists, or is it just kind of like, okay, you've made your decision, that's that?
No, I mean, I think there's always a potential for those accesses, but there's no guarantee that once the person has made that decision, that they're going to be motivated to access that. That's I think our real problem.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I understand that a special committee of MPs and senators have been meeting to consider whether youth under 18 should have access to euthanasia and assisted suicide. So how likely is this, and how young of an age are we talking here?
Well, in reality, in the medical system already, there is already a category called mature minor. And so even in the current system, there are exceptions where a youth, say between 12 and 18 years old, can make medical decisions for themselves for other medical issues. I can't believe
that's a thing.
Right? Well, yeah, and so even like with terminal patients, maybe with cancer and so on. So a lot of it is judged based upon whether the individual, indicates an ability, an emotional and a mental ability, a cognitive ability to actually understand these things. So that category already exists in the system. So almost certainly, with MAID being subsumed under as a medical process or a medical procedure in Canada, it's almost certain that that's coming in Canada. And so it's not law yet. Thankfully, it's not law yet. But so there is still a chance for our voices to be heard on this. But it's almost certainly to come into play. And when we're talking about mature minors, there at the Senate hearing committees on MAID, there was a division of opinion. Early on in the process, the Canadian Pediatric Society was arguing against opening up MAID to those under 18. But many physicians, and there's no consensus on this, many physicians were arguing for as young as 12, and some were saying there should be no limit or no lower limit on how low a person can go, as long as they can be shown to understand what they're doing.
Oh my gosh! And how do you even qualify that in terms of what they're thinking and how mature they are? It almost brings me to tears just thinking about these young kids going through this. Absolutely.
And that is that is a big part of it. Is it does depend so much upon the opinions of a few people about whether the individual is mature enough to understand what they're going through. Not to mention the kind of traumas and issues that they're perhaps facing, especially if they're going through some kind of medical procedures or under heavy medication. It's so difficult to really know how well we confidently be able to judge that this young person, this 12-year-old, really knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. Now, David, what kind of feedback are you getting on this issue from mental health groups and from physicians themselves? Is there a majority in favor of this?
There doesn't seem to be any consensus emerging. There's several different camps. There's sort of a wide open camp that is all for MAID in general, and then of course there's some who are much more open to it for youth under 18. So there's really no consensus on mental health professionals. Disability groups, Indigenous groups, many of those types of groups have actually expressed deep concern about how both MAID and eligibility for youth is really puts young people and vulnerable peoples at risk. So people without a social safety net, a good social safety net, people without the resources, people who are perhaps in isolated places and don't have that support, MAID just seems like a really easy option for them.
What about the physicians themselves? Do they currently have their conscious rights protected when it comes to MAID, or are they required to either participate or to refer to another doctor who does in fact perform MAID?
That's a great question. So in Canada, there is no conscience protection level at the level of the federal law because health is all regulated by the provinces. So each province has their own kind of set of rules about how conscientious objectors are dealt with. In Canada right now, most provinces have some allowance or significant allowance for those who object to participation in MAID. But Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia are still requiring even objecting physicians to provide what they call effective referrals. So even if they object to personal, and they're not going to be forced to engage in MAID personally or directly, in those provinces, those doctors are still obligated by their professional colleges to give an effective referral, which means they have to make sure that the patient is handed off to someone else to ensure that this is done. And for many doctors, that's tantamount to aiding and abetting in a murder.
Yeah, absolutely. Really quick, what can viewers who maybe don't agree with this do to stop the expansion of MAID? How can they practically get involved? This may be one of those issues that gets overlooked in our busy world, right?
Right. So I think we have to talk about it more amongst our communities and our churches. I think a lot of Christians still are actually unaware even about this. I talk to people regularly who are actually even surprised that we even have MAID in Canada. And then others are not even aware about things like the coming opening up to mental illness. So there needs to be a lot more education. We certainly need to pray, need to keep praying about this. From an advocacy perspective, I think that it always is good to contact your MP and express your reservations and your concerns about the expansion of MAID. Although the March 23 deadline is actually coming, and that's already in legislation, I think that we're seeing more and more stories of people receiving MAID that people are alarmed by, that they are receiving MAID. And so I think there can be a concerted effort to call for more safeguards to be put in place. That still is possible. And I think we all need to learn to ask the question, like, how can we volunteer? Palliative care is one of the main kind of ways we can counter MAID, because a lot of people don't have access to palliative care. And I think that we also have to advocate not only for restrictions on MAID, but we have to advocate both federally and provincially for better access to palliative care. Only about 30% of Canadians actually have good access to palliative care. And so if we're in that position, if someone gets into that position, even if they wanted it, they can't get it.
Looks like we're out of time, but thanks so much for being with us today, David, and for enlightening us on this incredibly fascinating topic.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great being here.
Absolutely. David Goretzky is the Executive Vice President and soon to be the new CEO and President of EFC.
The United Conservative Party will be choosing its new leader on October the 6th. Now, one of the leading candidates to succeed Jason Kenney as Premier is Fort McMurray Lac-La-Biche MLA and former Wildrose leader, Brian Jean. Brian, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thanks very much. A pleasure to be here.
Now, the last time we chatted during the first UCP leadership contest, I asked you if you're going to take your ball and go home if you didn't win the leadership. So let me ask you again this time, Brian. Will you quit provincial politics if you don't win this time around?
Well, are you asking me if I have to stay forever in politics, or are you saying to me that if, 3 of my family members die and I'm the executor and I have to go back to take care of 3 local businesses that employ 25 families, should I go back or should I let them, close down and not worry about my parents and my family? And I'm just saying to you, there's other things besides politics in my life. And I went back in a situation, I had 3 close family members die within a space of a year of me leaving politics. I had my wife medevac to Edmonton and almost lost her and our child. Listen, folks, things happen that are more important than politics. For instance, family. We had a lot of health things going on. It depends on the circumstances. It depends if my boss passes me in the hallway every day for 4 months and doesn't say, "Hey, Brian, how's it going?" If he doesn't talk to me or she doesn't talk to me for 4 months, you know what? I might take my ball and go home. It all depends who the leader is and how the leader treats the other people that were in the leadership contest.
So you'd be willing to stay on as MLA and support the new leader then?
Absolutely. I absolutely will, especially if it's me. That would be awesome, because I think with my 10 years of federal politics, my 10 years as a litigator, even constitutional law, and my 3 years as an MLA and leader of the opposition, I know how to unite people. Remember, during that period of time that I was the leader of the Wild Rose, I had a couple of wild MLAs. I never had to kick anybody out of my caucus, and nobody quit my caucus. I had to suspend somebody just for 30 days, but that was a different issue. That was, to be honest, Eric Hildebrand, who's a well-known independent thinker, and another person in my caucus for that period of time was Drew Barnes. These people were empowered by me. They were united by me, and I can do it again. I took the Wild Rose from 2 MLAs and took it up to 20, and then we stayed together, and we're the official opposition. When the other parties were disintegrating around us, we stayed there, and we were solid, and we stood up for Albertans and fought the carbon tax, fought Bill 6, made sure that we stood against Notley and Trudeau, and I think we were a very effective opposition. And now I've got my personal affairs in order. I am a business person for 30 years, and I have several businesses still up in northern Alberta, but I'm trying to deal with that. I have good people running them right now, and I hope that they can stay and be as profitable as they could be. But the truth is that I'm focusing everything I possibly can on politics, because nothing is more important than Alberta politics today. We've got what's happening with Justin Trudeau and our attack on our autonomy here in Alberta, and the attack on our very way of life. And I think we have to stand up against it. That's why I'm coming back to politics, so I can be that voice that we thought we heard, but then there was no action. I'm going to take action. On day number 1, I'm going to serve notice on the other premiers and the Prime Minister, Section 46 legal notice that we want to go to constitutional negotiations. And according to the reference case on paragraph 69, we get the opportunity to do so, and the Supreme Court of Canada will enforce that for us. So that's what we need to do. We need to go open the Constitution, have that discussion. And you know what? Last night, we had a debate in Eastern Alberta, and it was so good to see a couple of the other candidates come on my side and say, yes, we're going to have to open up the Constitution and admit that. So, folks, that's the only way we can do things. That's the only way we can fix things, is we have to sit around the table with the other people involved, and that's the other premiers and the Prime Minister, and try to fix it, because it's not working right now. Canada's broken, but I think we can fix it. I think we can.
Now, many of us here in Alberta, Brian, are quite concerned over the doctor shortage here in our province. What's your plan for addressing the issue should you become Premier?
Well, immediately allow the 700 nurse practitioners to start doing what they were trained to do, and to get to the table and negotiate something immediately and get them working so they can start practicing. And they're not practicing right now. Also, to make sure we take our nursing situation and try to increase our nurses by 30 to 40% in the short term. How we do that is we, without spending any more money, right now 120% of the wage of nurses is in overtime. That's right. We spend more on overtime than we spend on wages. We could literally give our nurses a 10% raise, double the amount of nurses, and spend the same amount of money, and not burn out our nurses, not have them flee the province for other jurisdictions that give people good quality of life and protect and stand up for nurses, doctors, and and teachers. These are the pinnacles of our community, and we need to stop treating them like they are the people that keep our communities together. They are the pillars of which our communities are usually founded on. And I know how important they are in rural Alberta. And I can tell you, I haven't had a doctor, my own doctor, for 30 years in Fort McMurray. So I know what it's like to have a doctor shortage, I promise you. Fort McMurray is one of those places where we have a huge number of people come from outside of our province and utilize our services, and the locals just, are left behind on a lot of cases.
A number of municipalities, including your region of Wood Buffalo, have expressed concern with the province centralizing the EMS dispatch. Now, officials say it's in an effort to save around $6 million annually. A number of mayors say it's simply not working since it's taking ambulances far too long to arrive at residences, especially in the rural areas. Now, would you decentralize and give the power back to the municipalities?
Immediately.
And why would you do that?
Because it'll save people's lives and respond quicker. Somebody in downtown Calgary, Edmonton, does not know where Anzac, Alberta is. They have no idea about local geography. And we need to make sure that we have people that are locally concerned about what's going on. And we have people that are be able to dispatch so they understand locations, they understand specifics, they work more quickly. There's no question that the more authority at the local level, the better the response time, the better the concern is going to be. And frankly, the better you're going to increase the resources or decrease the resources depending on what your needs are. Somebody in Calgary doesn't know what I need in Fort McMurray, nor do they know what you need in Lethbridge, and I'm going to decentralize it immediately.
Now, there was a serious push by Premier Jason Kenney to have our own provincial police force. Brian, where do you stand on the issue? I mean, many Albertans I've chatted with are quite happy with the RCMP doing the job here in Alberta.
Oh my, I'm happy with the RCMP doing the job they do for the communities they do it in, and I think they should continue to do that as long as those communities want them to do that. You see, up there's a sign that says autonomy for Albertans. I mean that. Autonomy means freedom of choice. That means that if my body, my choice, but it also means if communities want to have the freedom of choice to pick the RCMP, which is a premium police force, and I've heard as much as $250,000 an officer per year, if they want that premium police force, they should have the opportunity to have that premium police force. But if they don't, they have an opportunity to have part of a provincial police force, part of a city police force. We currently have Calgary and Edmonton and Lethbridge City Police. We have other police forces around the province, and we have Indigenous police forces, and it's growing. I think choice and opportunity will get us, frankly, better outcomes. And for the more competition we have, the more options we have, the better the prices are going to be, and frankly, the better the service is going to be. And that's why I believe in freedom of choice. That's why I believe that we should keep the RCMP, and if communities want to hire them to do the work that is so important, let's do it. But my major concern on this whole policy issue is really, truly, are we going to keep enough police officers? Because I don't think we have enough police officers on the ground right now in rural Alberta. I will tell you that I keep hearing stories about people chasing people that are stealing quads or snowmobiles or trucks or whatever out of their yard. It is not acceptable. We need a better response time on the ground by police officers. I spent 10 years in the justice system here in Alberta, practicing law, and I can tell you I have some great ideas on how to improve the justice system and not just make it available to people who have money. Because right now, that's what it appears to me, that if you have money, you can get justice, but otherwise it's very unlikely.
Now, a number of law-abiding gun owners, Brian, are angry at the Trudeau Liberals over Bill C-21. They say it's really doing nothing to address gun violence in our country and the gangs. They should be going after the gangs instead. Those, especially in rural Alberta, are very upset. How do you see it with Bill C-21?
I see it the same way. I was part of the government for Harper that voted to end the long gun registry. I was very proud to do that. I'm a sports gun owner. I also have restricted weapons permit since I was, I think, 18 or 19 years old. I'm one of the most vetted people on the entire planet, as are all Canadian gun owners, because I will tell you, they check everything to make sure that we're adequately trained and skilled and not dealing with any mental stresses around us. And I think that right now it's a total infringement. And what I would do is, I don't like stop work orders or, work to rule situations. But in this particular case, we have to slow things down as much as possible and hope that we get a conservative government in Ottawa that understands that the people that own these rifles and duck hunters and sports shooters are not the people that are causing the problems. The people causing the problems are criminals who are not going to obey the law. They are going to bring the guns in from the United States, which they are currently doing, and they are not going to obey any law in relation to what they do. And those are the people that sell the guns to the people that go out and do these horrific crimes. We have to make sure that we have better mental health in our hospitals. But also my proposal is to bring mental health training into grade 6 plus up to grade 12, a half an hour mandatory a week, so that our children can have training at the very youngest possible age on how to reach in a toolbox and pull out that tool that they need to deal with that mental stress, whether it is a death in the family or a separation or a divorce of their parents. Or people need more mental health training, and right now I believe we're in an epidemic state.
So Brian, let's also talk about your plan for tackling crime and the opioid crisis in many regions of the province. Stats Canada says Lethbridge is right up there when it comes to the crime severity index. How would you, as a premier, work with the municipalities in addressing crime?
You know, it is an ongoing problem. I was in Lethbridge last week and I saw the tent cities. I saw what was going on. I do understand the dilemma there. I'm very concerned about it. I've been searching and looking at other opportunities around the world as far as empirical data to find out how other jurisdictions deal with these situations successfully, because that's the key. You know, most of the time the people that commit crimes are either young people, you know, under the age of 18 or 19, or people that have addiction problems or mental illness or frankly poverty. And as a province, we have to deal with those issues firsthand. And I think the underscoring situation is frankly mental health and education in our schools, and to make sure that we bring as many people as we possibly can up as far as we can, so that they are educated, they are trained, they have the ability to get jobs and success. And in the meantime, what we have to do is have more officers on the street that have training on mental health issues. And, you know, some of the proposals that I think are in response to the provincial police force, and in particular, the social workers, you know, I think they had a proposal of 60 or 70 social workers that would be hired with the provincial police force. Well, I don't think we have to stop hiring them just because we don't do a mandatory provincial police force. I think we should look at getting that opportunity so they can work with police officers firsthand and deal with mental stresses and mental health the way it should be on the ground with the people that are committing a lot of the crimes.
Brian, a number of seniors who we've chatted with here on Bridge City News say they really feel neglected by their governments. Now, you visited a Lethbridge Senior Centre recently. What were some of the concerns that our seniors shared with you?
Inflation. They talked about prices going up, whether it's groceries, whether it's appliances, whether it's fixtures. And that's why I proposed a royalty-free gasoline and diesel program. You know what? We own the oil and diesel here in Alberta. Why are we paying royalties on it to our own government so they can go spend it? So I'm proposing that we would do royalty-free oil and gasoline for all of the oil, for all the gasoline and diesel that we consume here in Alberta. 380,000 barrels a day is what we consume here. That's a lot of gas and diesel. But remember, that money comes out of Albertans' pockets, goes into the Alberta government, and then we pay equalization payments on that money. So I'm going to stop that, first of all, which will leave more money in Alberta and more money for Albertans. But it'll also lower it. For instance, in a couple of months ago, we had prices that it would have been about 30 cents a liter to remove the fuel tax and also the royalties on Albertans' oil and diesel, which is what I promised to do if I become premier, and I will do that. And it will mean the lowest prices of gasoline and diesel in Canada. It'll also mean that groceries will go down, appliances will go down, all those things that come in on trucks, the price will go down. All those things that come in on planes, the price will go down. All those things that come in for trains will also come down. And you know what? This will become a hub for airlines, for transportation companies, for jobs for Albertans. And that's why I think lower prices are better, because it keeps money in Albertans' jeans and makes sure we don't send it to Ottawa. The other thing is transmission and distribution charges for electricity. We're going to have surpluses over the next few years, and we need to pay down the debt for sure. But until those long-term bonds become due, we should use those surpluses and the interest derived from that to help Albertans with transmission and distribution charges. They are outrageous right now. We've overbuilt hugely in the past. Our governments have, both PC and NDP. And we have to stop that overbuild. And what we need to do is focus on making sure that Albertans can afford those huge distribution charges, those huge transmission charges, which we're paying right now, primarily in rural Alberta as a majority, but we're paying it right across the province. So what I'm saying is, let's lower costs as much as we can. The other thing we need to do is look at affordable housing. I'm a big believer in tripartite agreements and making sure that we work with groups like the Salvation Army, other groups. I'm a believer, and I know that there are a lot of really good groups out there that do a lot of work, and they do it for nothing. They do it because they love their Lord, and they want to do something, or they love their God and they want to do something. And there's amazing groups right across the world that do it. And we need to partner with those groups. We need to make sure that the government funding gets the biggest bang for the buck. And let's utilize those NGOs and the other groups that are available right now. And let's make sure we get good housing that then is going to have good management afterwards, because our seniors, frankly, for what they did for us in this country and what we have today, I think we should treat them a lot better than what we do. And we can't rely on Ottawa for it. Let's face it, Justin Trudeau is not going to help us. We need to help ourselves and our seniors right here. And I'm going to do that as Premier if I get that privilege.
So, Brian, we only have about 30 seconds left here, but I wanted to talk to you a bit about agriculture. It's a big part of our economy here in southwestern Alberta. Farmers are angry at the Trudeau Liberals for recommending they reduce fertilizer use. How would you stand up to Ottawa and support our farmers?
Well, the first thing is I wouldn't obey that particular law because it's an infringement on our jurisdiction under Section 92 of the Constitution. As I've mentioned quite a few times about the Constitution, we need to open it. People think it's a pipe dream. It is not. I litigated for 10 years. It's an agreement. We can go and we can renegotiate it. And every province in Canada right now wants to do it. They want to stop the pipeline. They've all joined the pipeline appeal. They want to open up the Constitution in relation to healthcare funding. There's a lot of provinces that are not happy with the distribution of votes across the country and corresponding politicians. There's a lot of things we need to do. And the only way we're going to fix any of this is, frankly, to open up the Constitution, give them on day number one, I've said I will give them a Section 46 notice under the Constitution, which is actually laid out in paragraph 69 of the reference case from Quebec. And let's face it, the Supreme Court of Canada thought they were laying the path for Quebec to do certain things. So they laid out the rules. And now Albertans are going to take advantage of it. We got a 62% vote on the referendum, and that referendum is the authority to open up the Constitution for negotiations. So that's what I'm going to immediately do. That's why I came up with the referendum suggestion when I was the leader of the Wild Rose. That's why I undertook a study with economists across Canada, and that's why I suggested a referendum was the only way to do that. Jason Kenney did that for us. Now let's go the next step. He didn't. I will.
UCP leadership candidate and Fort McMurray-Lac La Biche MLA Brian Jean, thanks so much for joining us today from Calgary.
My pleasure. Thanks.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks for watching.